control room where our Orbit 2 team is on duty. This team just came on shift a couple of hours ago and will be working with the crew in the second half of their crew day. On orbit, we have the Expedition 35 crew of Commander Chris Hadfield, joined by his fellow crewmates, cosmonauts Pavel Vinogradov, Alexander Misurkin, Roman Romanenko, and NASA astronauts Chris Cassidy and Tom Marshburn. The crew of 6 is working steadily through the afternoon's activities. They woke up at about 1 a.m. Central Time today, which is their standard wake-up time, and had their routine vehicle inspections as well as some laptop checks and other configurations. They also had some start-of-day sample collections as part of some of the ongoing biology and physiology experiments that are ongoing. They also had personal time for breakfast and hygiene before kicking off their day with a daily planning conference, which is a tag-up with all of the supporting mission control centers, including the team that you see here. First up for the crew, especially for Commander Chris Hadfield, was some dietary logs as part of the ongoing energy experiment. This is a study being conducted by the European Space Agency, which has the crew members adhering to a strict regimented diet and also monitors their oxygen uptake as a study of their metabolism. This will help ensure proper nutrition to maximize crew performance in future missions. Chris Hadfield was joined by NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn for work on the upgrades to the KU communication system. This morning they worked on the high-rate communication system Unit 1 installation. That lasted about 4.5 hours. Hadfield and Marshburn have spent most of the day installing the redundant KU communications unit to complete the refurbishment of the station's KU system. That KU COM Unit 2, which was installed and checked out last week, will continue to be the prime unit for the new high-rate communication system, with Unit 1 serving for the time being as a backup. Meanwhile, their cosmonaut counterparts, Pavel Vinogradov and Roman Romanenko, continued with their spacewalk preparations. Today's activities included preparations of the toolkit, as well as continued battery charging, as well as some sizing configurations for the 2 suits. That, again, preparation for a spacewalk that is scheduled for April 19th. During that planned excursion outside of the space station, the 2 cosmonauts will deploy and retrieve experiments and replace a retroreflector navigational aid on the exterior of the Zvezda service module that will be used by the European Space Agency's ATV vehicle named Albert Einstein that is planned to dock to the space station in June. Their fellow cosmonaut, Alexander Misurkin, worked on some science experiments, including the chromatomass experiment, and also did some saliva and blood collections. He also worked on the Constanta experiment, which studies the effect of microgravity on an enzyme. Their fellow crewmate, Chris Cassidy, spent his morning doing a number of maintenance tasks, including some work on the environmental health system. He had about 3 hours dedicated to the replacement of radiation area monitors. There was about 25 of those placed throughout the International Space Station. He removed the original 25 and replaced them with new radiation monitors. After a midday meal, the crewmates have continued with their afternoon activities. Commander Chris Hadfield again continuing with his diet log for the energy study, but then working on some additional maintenance tasks on board. Pavel Vinogradov and Roman Romanenko again continuing with their spacesuit preparations the afternoon, including leak and valve tests of those spacesuits. Misurkin also continuing with maintenance work in the Russian segment, specifically conducting emergency inspection of emergency vacuum valves, as well as some laptop configurations in the service module, and time set aside for familiarization, as well as some work on the computer networks and science experiment work. Chris Cassidy, who's also a new arrival on the International Space Station, has a few hours this afternoon dedicated to a cleanup of the crew quarters that will continue throughout the afternoon for him. He'll also have a private routine medical checkup and exercise sessions. Mazurkin, along with Pavel Vinogradov and Chris Cassidy, also had time set aside for crew orientation to become accustomed to living and working aboard the orbiting complex during their first weeks in orbit. The trio docked to the space station aboard their Soyuz TMA-8 spacecraft on March 28th, beginning a 5-month stay aboard the orbiting complex. Again, all those activities going smoothly, and we're in the early part of the crew day. That will continue for the next several hours. They're scheduled for off-duty and personal time around 2:30 p.m. Central Time, and crew sleep planned for 4:30 p.m. Central Time. You're looking at a current view of the location of the International Space Station. Again, the vehicle is always traveling about 17,500 miles per hour, and in this view you can see it's just making its way over Central Africa, specifically just traveling over Chad and continuing northeasterly over Sudan and Egypt. It'll continue this track, taking it over portions of Iraq before crossing over from orbital day to orbital night as it makes its way over Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. You can always access the ground track of the International Space Station on our website at www.nasa.gov, where you can also register to get notifications of space station sighting opportunities. The space station is easily identifiable from the Earth. It will appear as a very steady and bright point of light traveling over from west to east, and can be easily distinguished from traveling aircraft, as it will not be blinking, and aircraft of course would be. It's best seen in the early evening or early morning hours, and you can get sighting information on our website and also register to get text messages to alert you when there's a sighting opportunity headed your way. So we encourage you to take the opportunity to see this orbiting complex as it's traveling overhead.